What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Finally, today has come, my favorite day, and that's going to be new parts day. One of my suppliers finally shipped one of the two boxes I had coming. This first box has all the parts I need to get the transfer case done, and also some tub parts. The second part of that shipment's coming tomorrow, and that's basically going to be the rear panel. It's an oversized item, so they had to ship it up, separately. That's the first thing I got. I got some cow support braces here for both corners. Let's see what else we got. All the receipts. Shows how much this hobby actually costs. Got some rattle cans. Just do some touch up, some primer and some olive drab. Got some top mounting brackets. The person that had this Jeep before me welded the holes. Here, I'll go ahead and show you. Yeah, as I mentioned, the previous owner, they welded up the holes that this bracket went onto, so I had to get the bracket early so I could make sure my, I could go ahead and mock it up and mark the hole so I have a good place to drill. Got some more components for the top. These are where the framework for the top fold down to. Also, these holes that are supposed to be on the tub were welded shut, so I got two of those. Got the parts of the transfer cases, new intermediate shaft, and then also, these bearings were only $5 a piece, so I got two new roller bearings for it. And we got some fuel tanks stone guards. These were missing. I could have saved myself a little bit of money by just fabricating these, but unfortunately I didn't have the originals to go off of, so I just spent the money and got, what I needed. And also, it's kind enough to hook me up with a free hat. As much money as I spend with these guys, it's real nice to know that, you get a nice hat. And if y'all are wanting to learn more about these, specifically MBs and Ford GPWs, this is the place to go. These guys, they've been doing this longer than I've been alive, so real plethora of knowledge, and where I pretty much my go-to on getting a lot of my unanswered questions answered at. So let's go ahead and get started on the transfer case. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and check out our new bearings. These are the exact same ones I had in it before. These are actually new old stock roller bearings made, I don't know how long ago, but it says Western Germany, so that goes to show you how old they are. Got them in a cool little, like a wax paper. It looks like a little bit of Cosmoline or something on them, so I'm going to go ahead and spray it off with brake clean and get it all freed up. Alright, so I got all that Cosmoline cleaned off. While I was waiting on all these parts to come in, I did some investigation on the thrust issue on the intermediate gear, and I'll go ahead and put it all back together like it is, and I'll show you how I diagnosed that, and also a remedy I came up with, and go from there. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and mock up the intermediate gear with the thrust washers, new shaft, and new bearings. Normally, and I'd be installing this, after checking everything, I'd put some transmission assembly lube on the back plate here, so it has a nice sticky surface to stick to while I'm trying to fish the shaft through the intermediate gear. Sometimes it could get a little frustrating. Got the assembly lube here off to the side here. It's nice and tacky. I'm not going to do it now because I don't want it messing up my clearances. I'm going to check, and once I do the final assembly, I'll go ahead and use that to help out. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and try to fish the gear through here. Go ahead and just let it rest. I'm going to go ahead and take my thrust washer. Now there is a key section milled out stamping on here, and it's also milled out on the case itself. It's going to go down at the 6 o'clock position. So I'm going to go ahead and take my shaft, and that's going to hold my thrust washer. Oh, fell out. Alright, correction. Before I even put the intermediate gear in, I'm going to go ahead and put this thrust washer in and support it with the shaft just protruding out. Hopefully this is coming up on camera just good. Just fine. So hopefully y'all can see that. Whoop. Next I'm going to go ahead and grab the intermediate gear. And remember, your spiral cut's going to be your high range and your straight cut's going to be your low range. And thrust washer fell. It's going to take multiple attempts. It can get a little frustrating. It's a lot easier when you use that assembly lube, but like I said, I'll go ahead and show y'all how I check these thrust clearances and everything. So my pain is your pleasure at this point. As I'm kind of fishing the gear down, I'm going to keep pushing the shaft through. That way it's going to hold that thrust washer in and also support the gear. So I got the other thrust washer. They are identical. So there's no left and right. As long as, you put that tab in the milled portion of it. One thing you might have to do is the little roller bearings might fall off to one side, which actually happened on this one. Alright, so what I wound up doing off camera, I just went ahead and got a screwdriver in here in this little gap and just basically pushed the roller bearings back into the intermediate gear. So I'm going to go ahead and slide this thrust washer in. I'm going to keep that stamping part at the 12 o'clock position, just kind of fish it in a little bit, and it will, once you get that little stamping into the the indent on the case, you're good, because it'll want to stop rotating. It's alright. Go ahead and push the pin a little bit more. There we go. We got the pin all the way in. So good deal. Alright. Alright, as you can see, everything's spinning. I did put a little bit of a 90 weight on those bearings before I put them in the intermediate gear. An important tip, this is just basically my opinion on gear oil for these. I run GL1, that's a mineral-based gear oil. Your GL5, which is your more modern gear oils, they can be corrosive to ferrous metals. That's brass, copper, and the main component on these thrust washers is copper. That's your wear surface on these. And also on the transmission, your synchronizers are brass, and the thrust washers for it are copper. So that's up for debate on a lot of people. But, GL1's still readily available. You can get it at a Tractor Supply. It's under the name of Ford Tractor Transmission Fluid. And then, your local Napa and stuff should have some GL1. Alright, so as I mentioned in the previous video, our thrust issue was when it was in low range. Right now, the transfer case is in neutral. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and engage the low range. So we're just going to give the shifter, a rail, a tap to put it in low range. All right. Now you can see you could probably, if you look closely, see the whole gear thrusting. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and measure the side clearance. All right, so I'm going to start with a 5/1000 feeler gauge. And it's just sliding right through on this side. Go ahead and check the other side. I have to, there we go. A little bit difficult with the camera right in front of me. All right, so what happened there is I just turned it and it's locking up my feeler gauge, and I let off and it slides. Locking up, slid out. And that's at the 5/1000. So I'm gonna go ahead and do the other side again. All right, so we got 5/1000 up top, on the sides. Can still move it on that side. So I'm gonna go ahead and do the 10. All right, that slides right through on that side. Now, to my knowledge, I checked a few of the manuals. I have a pretty in-depth manual on the later Jeeps, you know, the civilian ones, the CJ2A, 3A, 3B, CJ5 and 6, that share pretty much the same kind of transfer case, you know, just upgraded with a bigger intermediate gear shaft and all that. And I can't find a thrust specification, so I'm pretty much just going off what my gut's telling me on what to do. So if any of you viewers can find that for me, that'd be great. So I can't fit the 10 in on this side. So what my plan of action was is our gear oil is going to take up some of this thrust, you know, take up some of this clearance with it being a thicker oil. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make some shims to go behind the thrust washers here. So it's basically going to be between the casting and the steel portion of the thrust washer. And, you know, hopefully between that and the oil, it'll eliminate the thrust. They're going to be 5/1000. So I'm thinking about adding 5/1000 on this side and 5/1000 on this side to give me that 10/1000 I had. If that doesn't work, I'll take the 5/1000 shim off here and make 10 on this side and see what we have. Because another thing we need to look at is our mesh. So primarily this Jeep's going to be driven in high range, so we really want to concentrate on how pretty much our backlash of our gears is. And it looks like it's biasing this side a little bit more. So that's why I'm going to be kind of cautious on adding too much shim to this side. Alright, so put some shims in. I made these crudely made brass shims. It's 5/1000. So what ended up happening is I put 5/1000 on the front of the transfer case on the high range gear set, and nothing on the low range portion. I couldn't get any other shims in here. I tried some 1000 shim stock to try to feed in there. It didn't really want to go in there too good. I didn't want to force it. But I'm actually kind of happy with the thrust. It seems like it went away. It's nice and solid. I mean, I didn't want it too tight. I think my 10/1000 estimate, you know, was correct, but wasn't realistic, you know, in terms of clearance because of the oil and everything like that. So right now, between the copper portion of the thrust washer and the gear, I can't fit a 5/1000 in, and then that same portion, can't get nothing in. So that's good, because on the copper portion of the thrust washer to the gear, if If you remember right, I believe this side was 10 and this was 5. So I'm shooting this video a couple days after the fact of the first part. But behind our thrust washer, a 5/1000 is nice and tight. I can still move it around, but it's still got some good resistance. It didn't swallow it like it did that 10, if you remember right. And the same goes with this side. I can't even get it in. So pretty happy with it. One thing I'll show you all on pretty much just some reassurance is one thing I'll show you on some reassurance to make sure you did everything correctly is take one of these beam type torque wrenches. This one's in inch-pounds. I use this for setting up bringing pinions on differentials. However, whatever the resistance is on the pinion, normally the book will give you a spec in inch-pounds. So we're going to go ahead and do that same trick on this transfer case. We're going to see how much torque it takes to actually, get the gears spinning, and then we're going to do a full rotation with the pinion while watching the indicator here and making sure it's consistent the whole 360 degrees. If we have a spike, a spike in it, or, a decrease in it, we know we got kind of a high and low spot in this gear, and that could give us some vibration issues, noise, and it's not good to be having some crooked gears in here, especially going at speed. So I'm going to go ahead and turn the transfer case around for that so we get a better angle on it. All right, so I'm going to try to show this as best I can. Got the torque wrench set up. I'm going to go ahead and put some tension on it and see, I'll read out the reading I see on here. All right, so far we got about, before it moved, about 175 inch-pounds. So we're going to memorize that, and then I'm going to try to keep my eye on the gauge as we're doing a whole 360 degrees. It's kind of hard with the camera in the way. So we're about still at about, and then we drop down about 125. Maintaining that 125. It's just jerking because that's me trying to move around, trying to work around the camera. Yeah, we're staying consistent, so that's real good. And we are in low range. That was the problem thrust. We can go ahead and probably do it in high range, if you want. Compare it, but it's going to give you a different reading because of the gear reduction. Yeah, did a whole 360 degrees. The breakaway was about 175 inch-pounds, and the whole 360 was a consistent, 125. So pretty happy with that. There is no spec for that for this transfer case. This was just a trick I figured I'd show you guys. And it's just a little bit of reassurance for me that everything's, not binding up again. And so, all right, so I'm going to go ahead and put the oil pan back on. I got a gasket set. Put a new oil pan gasket on it, clean all the old copper and whatnot that was on the bottom of the pan and all that noise. Quick tip on the specific early Dana 18s, you're going to have these two holes here and also this little tie bar. What that's for is for the transmission shifter rails. So I'll go over to the transmission and show you what I'm talking about. All right, so here's the back of the T84 transmission. You can always tell it's a T84 because it's a flat top. That's the reason for the hole in that little detent bar I was telling you about, because these are actually external shift rails. These shift rails will move in and out as you change between your first and reverse, I believe, is the only one that moves. The second and third stays put. But that's a big telltale sign you have a T84 and an early Dana 18 transfer case, is because of that. Also, just like I mentioned in the removal video, you're going to be cautious of your output shaft and not pull it out. I have this locked in first gear, like I mentioned. So, it's got a little bit of grease left over. It's a little bit of transmission assembly lube. So I'll probably go ahead and clean that out of the bearing there before I put the transfer case on and clean up this gasket surface. Alright, so I'm ready to put the transfer case back in. I'm using my transmission jack. Just kind of help keep everything centered. One thing I am using, and I recommend, is some of this Permatex gasket shellac. It works really good with these old paper gaskets. I haven't had a lot of luck with RTV with these Jeeps. They seem to leak a lot more with RTV, so I switched to this old school stuff, and it seems to be doing the trick. So I'm going to go ahead and just put another layer on both sides. Problem is, if I need to take this out again, the gasket's going to be stuck to everything. And this is my last gasket too. I always try to keep a spare gasket kit on hand at all times. So make sure I order a new one on my next parts purchase. Alright, so I decided not to use the transmission jack. It's not really wanting to line up too good for me, so just going to go ahead and do it the old-fashioned way. Now keep in mind that little detent I explained earlier has got to be lined up just right or it won't go on. Which it seems like I'm having that problem right now. Oh, there we go. There we go. Alright, so I saved y'all some boringness. I put all the transfer case and transmission mount bolts in. Got the transmission mount bolt here. It goes like so. It's got an insulator and then a steel washer that's going to go from the bottom up, a 15/16 and a 3/4. Alright, and a lock washer too. Alright, so now we're going to put the clutch linkage back in. Don't forget there's a spring on this end and some washers, and we're just going to slide this in and line it up with the holes here on the frame rail and go ahead and bolt it up. This one's a little bit easier in the civilian versions because it's got nuts integrated on the bracket, so you don't have to worry about getting it lined up that much. All right. Alright, so after we got that secured, we're going to go ahead and put our linkage in. Got a new cotter pin. Alright, the next thing we got is our throwout bearing cable. You have to pull your clutch pedal back. You have to put your clevis pin in, cotter pin. Alright, clutch is working again. Alright, so basically that's it. Alright, so the last thing we're going to do is put the output gear back in. Here it is. This is going to be facing towards the back. Might have to turn the transfer case a little bit to get it to free up. Get it meshed just right. Alright. Washer. And then the castle nut. As far as torque goes, basically I'm just going to put the transfer case in gear. Got the transmission still in gear, and I'm just going to snug it up. Doesn't need a lot of torque on it. And that nut size, for your information, is 1 inch and 15/16. Alright, so I'm going to see if my cotter pin hole lined up. It did, and I don't see it. And put the transmission in neutral. Alright, found it. All right. And it didn't turn out the way I wanted it to. Nope. Alright, I'm going to redo this cotter pin. Alright, so I redid my cotter pin. A lot happy with that. And pretty much the last step is put the inspection cover back on. Right here. But a little trick I do is I'll go ahead and fill up the gear oil while I have the cover open like this, so I don't have to, you know, use a pump and all that stuff. So just dump it right in, and then I got to top off the transmission, put the drive shaft back on. And before I put the drive shaft back on, I'm going to test run it without the drive shaft connected, you know, get the speed up on the transfer case. Kind of listen for it, try to feel for any vibrations, and then if I'm happy with it, I'm going to put the drive shaft back on it and give it a test drive tomorrow and see how it goes. So, alright y'all, well, that's going to conclude today's video. Hope this was helpful. Hope y'all learned some stuff. Hopefully this transfer case works out, you know, because from here on out, it's going to be full steam ahead on the tub. I finally got the last part I needed. I'll go ahead and show you all that right now. Got the basically the rear panel in. Real good quality. This is the best one you can buy. And as you can see, this one's been cut out. Like I said, I believe this Jeep was sold to the Greek military, and they used it for a recoilless rifle setup. It's got heavier duty leaf springs in the back. They kind of reinforced this corner of the tub for maybe like a gunner's pedestal or something, you know, like a seat or something. But I want to put this back to factory condition, so that panel is going to be going in. And then also I got some the cow braces to go on either ends, and also just keep removing some of this Bondo on the passenger side and do some dent removal. Also, I'm going to continue working on the F-head, basically inspection / overhaul. Got the crankshaft out here on the workbench. I'm going to be measuring crank journals, you know, basically your main bearing journals, connecting rod bearing journals, the crank pins, also measuring the bores. I'm going to show you all how to do that, along with honing the cylinders out, and continue working on the head. I'm going to go ahead and order the correct valve spring compressor. It's just going to make my life a lot easier. So, well, all right. Well, I appreciate y'all watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. You know, that's what's going to keep me going, keep me motivated to keep putting out these videos, because it does take a lot of extra time setting up the camera, editing, working around the camera. So it's real nice to, you know, for y'all to show your support. So, all right. Until next time, y'all have a good one.